Blind rancher's mail-order bride has horrific scars she thinks he'll never see, but he can. Marcus Thornton sat in his study, fingers tracing the raised dots of a Braille letter, while his foreman James read the original aloud. 3 years had passed since the accident, a stallion's kick that had stolen his sight and nearly his life. 3 years of darkness, of depending on others, of learning to navigate his 10,000-acre ranch through sound, smell, and memory. "This one's different, boss," James said, pausing in his reading. "She's, honest about things." "Read it exactly as written." James cleared his throat and continued. "Mr. Thornton, I will not insult your intelligence with pretty words or false modesty. You seek a wife to help manage your estate. I seek a husband who cannot see my face. 5 years ago, I was considered beautiful. Then came the fire that killed my family and left me with scars that make children cry and adults look away. I am educated, capable, and excellent with numbers. I ran my father's business accounts before the fire. I can manage a household, read to you, write your correspondence. What I cannot do is be looked upon without causing distress. Perhaps we can offer each other what we need. You, someone who can be your eyes. Me, someone who doesn't need to see my face to value me. If this arrangement interests you, I await your response. Sincerely, Elizabeth Hartwell." Marcus sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. "What do you think, James?" "I think she sounds practical. Maybe too practical. Marriage ain't a business deal." "Isn't it? For someone like me," Marcus gestured at his eyes still covered with dark glasses he wore out of habit. "What woman would choose this without practical reasons? You're rich, successful, and blind, dependent, half a man. You know that ain't true." But Marcus had already made his decision. There was something in Elizabeth's letter, a recognition of mutual need that appealed to him, and the mention of her scars. He understood living with damage that defined you in others' eyes. Write back. Tell her yes. What Marcus didn't tell James, hadn't told anyone, was that for the past 6 months his vision had been returning. Not completely, not perfectly, but shadows had become shapes. Shapes were gaining in edges. The doctor in San Antonio had said it was possible, though rare. The swelling that had caused the blindness was receding. Marcus had kept it secret for reasons he couldn't fully articulate. Perhaps because people had finally stopped pitying him. Perhaps because he'd learned to value things beyond the visual. Or perhaps because he was afraid. Afraid the returning sight was temporary, afraid of how it would change things. Now Elizabeth Hartwell was coming, drawn by his blindness, and he was caught in a deception he hadn't intended. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood on the porch of his ranch house, James beside him, waiting for the carriage from town. He could see it now, a dark blur moving against the lighter blur of the road. Not clear, but visible. "She's coming," James said unnecessarily. The carriage stopped. Marcus heard the door open, heard skirts rustling, heard a soft intake of breath. "Mr. Thornton." The voice was cultured Eastern, with a slight rasp as if from old smoke damage. Marcus turned toward it, keeping his eyes unfocused as he trained himself to do. "Miss Hartwell, welcome to Triple Creek Ranch." She climbed the steps slowly. As she drew closer, Marcus could make out her shape. Tall for a woman, gracefully built, despite what seemed to be a slight favoring of her left side. Her face was a pale blur topped with dark hair, but the details remained hidden in his imperfect vision. "It's larger than I expected," she said. "The house or the ranch?" "Both. Your letter was modest about your success." "Success is relative. I have land cattle money, but I eat dinner alone and have no one to share the sunset with." "You can't see the sunset." "No, but I remember them. Sometimes memory is clearer than sight." She made a sound that might have been agreement or sorrow. James stepped forward. "Let me show you to your room, Miss Hartwell. You must be tired from the journey." "Thank you." As she passed, Marcus caught her scent. Lavender soap-trained smoke and something medicinal. Burn salve, he realized. She still treated the scars. That evening, they dined together in the formal dining room. Marcus had insisted on privacy, sending the servants away. He navigated his meal with practiced ease, aware of Elizabeth watching him. "You manage well," she observed. 3 years of practice. The body adapts even when the mind resists." "Yes," she said softly, "it does." "Tell me about the fire." Silence. Then why? Because it shaped you as my accident shaped me. We should know each other's defining moments. Elizabeth set down her fork. He heard the soft clink. We lived in Boston. My father owned a textile factory. There was a labor dispute threats. Someone set fire to our house at night. Father got my younger brother out, but went back for mother and me. The stairs collapsed. They died. I survived, but the burning timber. She stopped. I'm sorry. It was 5 years ago. I've had time to accept it. Acceptance and healing are not the same thing. No, she agreed. They're not. Marcus could see her shape shift, perhaps touching her face. He wanted to tell her that her scars didn't matter to him, that he could barely see them anyway, but that would require admitting his returning vision. Your turn, she said. Tell me about your accident. I was breaking a stallion. Devil's dance, we called him. Pure black, pure fury. I thought I had him controlled, but horses are never truly controlled, only temporarily cooperating. He kicked, caught me in the head. The impact caused swelling that pressed on the optic nerves. The doctors couldn't help. They saved my life. My sight seemed less important at the time. And now I've learned to see differently, through sound, touch instinct. Sometimes I think I understand my ranch better now than when I could see it. That's either profound or self-deception. Marcus laughed, surprised. You're very direct. Would you prefer pretty lies? No, I've had enough of those from people who pity me. I don't pity you, Mr. Thornton. We're both damaged. Pitied would be hypocritical. They were married 2 weeks later in the ranch's small chapel. Elizabeth wore a heavy veil which the minister frowned at but didn't comment on. Marcus wore his dark glasses as always. The ceremony was witnessed by James and his wife Maria, who served as the ranch's housekeeper. Do you take this woman's sight unseen, the minister asked, then flushed at his poor choice of words. I do, Marcus said firmly. Do you take this man knowing the challenges ahead? I do, Elizabeth replied, her voice steady behind the veil. They kissed through the fabric, a strange but somehow fitting beginning. The first months of marriage developed a careful rhythm. Elizabeth proved herself invaluable managing the ranch's accounts, with precision reading correspondence to Marcus writing his responses. She had a gift for numbers and negotiations that increased their profits by 15% in just 3 months. But it was the evenings Marcus treasured most. They would sit on the porch, Elizabeth describing the sunset in poetic detail, while Marcus added what he remembered of colors. She read to him, Dickens Austen occasionally shocking him with Poe. Her voice, despite its rasp, was melodious when reading. You should have been an actress, he told her one evening. I wanted to be once, before. The scars don't affect your voice. No, but acting requires being seen. Marcus's vision continued to improve. He could now make out features, though still blurred. He began to see the extent of Elizabeth's scars. The left side of her face was severely damaged, the skin twisted and discolored. But he also saw her eyes a warm brown that lit when she laughed, which happened more frequently as weeks passed. The deception weighed on him. Every day he didn't tell, but he felt like a betrayal, but every day that passed made it harder to confess. The crisis came when Elizabeth decided to redecorate his study. These curtains are too heavy, she declared, pulling them down without warning. Sunlight flooded the room. Marcus, caught off guard, instinctively turned toward the window, his eyes tracking the movement of dust motes in the golden light. Elizabeth froze. You can see. Elizabeth, I can explain. You can see, her voice rose. How long? It's been returning gradually, still not perfect. How long? Since before you arrived. But Elizabeth, she fled. Marcus heard her door slam, the lock turn. He stood outside pleading, but she wouldn't respond. James found him there hours later. You told her, she figured it out. About time, man can't build a marriage on lies. It wasn't a lie, not at first. And then I didn't know how to tell her. You tell her straight, like ripping off a bandage. She won't let me in. Then wait, she'll come out eventually. Elizabeth emerged the next morning wearing her heaviest veil and gloves that covered her arms. You'll have your marriage annulled, she said without preamble. No, you married me under false pretenses. As did you. Those aren't burn salve scars on your arms, are they? They're defensive wounds. Someone attacked you before the fire. Elizabeth went very still. How? My vision isn't perfect, but it's enough. And I've felt them when we've touched accidentally. I know knife wounds, Elizabeth. She sank into a chair. My father's business partner. He wanted to marry me. When I refused, he came to the house with a knife. I fought him off, but he set the fire as he left. The authorities blamed it on the labor disputes. No one believed a respected businessman would do such a thing. What was his name? Why? Because I have friends who can ensure he faces justice. Vincent Carlyle, and he's already faced justice. He died last year, fell from his horse, broke his neck. Convenient. I may have paid his groom to ensure the saddle wasn't properly secured. Marcus stared at his wife with new respect. You arranged his death. I arranged an opportunity for God's judgment. If the saddle held, he lived. It didn't. That's cold. Yes, as was letting my family burn. They sat in silence, two damaged people reassessing each other. Your scars don't bother me, Marcus said finally, even now seeing them more clearly. How can they not? They're hideous. They're proof you survived. They're evidence of strength and he paused, choosing words carefully. They're not who you are. These months I've fallen in love with your mind, your humor, your strength. The scars are just skin. Easy to say when you can look away. I couldn't look away for months, remember. When I thought I was blind, when I was mostly blind, I loved you. Seeing you now doesn't change that. Elizabeth pulled off her veil with sudden violence. Look at me. Really look. Marcus did. The left side of her face was indeed severely scarred. The skin melted and reformed into ridges and valleys. But her eyes were beautiful, her right profile lovely, and her expression fierce with a courage that took his breath away. You're magnificent, he said. Don't mock me. I'm not. You're magnificent because you survive. Because you don't hide, not really. Because you both faced the world's cruelty and chose to keep living. I hide behind veils. But you don't hide yourself, your intelligence, your competence, your humor. You share those freely. Elizabeth began to cry. I thought if you could see me, you'd send me away. And I thought if you knew I could see, you'd think I was pitying you. Are you? No more than you pity me. I don't pity you, yeah, I am. Exactly. The revelation changed everything and nothing. Elizabeth still wore veils in public but abandoned them at home. Marcus stopped pretending to be fully blind, though his vision remained imperfect enough that he needed help with reading and fine details. They learned each other anew. Marcus discovered that Elizabeth's scars extended down her neck and left shoulder, creating patterns he traced with gentle fingers. Elizabeth found that Marcus's injury had left him with crushing headaches that he'd hidden, helping him through them with cool cloths and quiet companionship. We're quite a pair, she said one evening, massaging his temples as he fought another headache. Matched set of damaged goods. Valuable antiques, perhaps, more interesting for our imperfections. But the world wasn't as accepting as they were of each other. When Elizabeth accompanied Marcus to a Cattlemen's Association meeting in San Antonio, the reactions were severe. Women whispered behind fans, men stared openly, and one child cried at the sight of her. Marcus wanted to leave immediately, but Elizabeth held his arm firmly. Running confirms their judgment, she whispered. We stay. They stayed. Elizabeth conducted herself with perfect dignity, discussing cattle prices and range management with surprising expertise. By the end of the evening, several ranchers were talking business with her, seemingly forgetting her appearance in light of her intelligence. But that night in their hotel room, she broke down. It never gets easier. Marcus held her. We don't have to go to these things. Yes, we do. You're building a cattle empire that requires social connections. Not at this cost. Everything has a cost, Marcus. The question is whether the prize is worth the price. You're worth any price. That's romantic but impractical. Then let's be practical. We host events at the ranch. Our territory buys our rules. Anyone who can't accept you isn't welcome. It worked mostly. The Triple Creek Ranch became famous for its gatherings. Business meetings, social events, even a harvest dance. Elizabeth organized everything with military precision. Those who attended learned to look past her scars to the brilliant woman beneath. One guest changed everything. Dr. Samuel Morrison from Philadelphia, a surgeon specializing in reconstructive techniques for war veterans. I've seen similar scarring, he told Elizabeth quietly during a dinner party. There are new methods, not to restore what was, but to improve function and reduce pain. I've accepted my appearance, but you still have restricted movement in your left arm. The contracting scars pull constantly. That could be improved. Elizabeth looked at Marcus, who took her hand. Your choice, he said. I love you as you are, but if you can have less pain. The surgery was scheduled for winter when rancher work was slower. Marcus accompanied Elizabeth to Philadelphia, holding her hand through the preparations. What if something goes wrong, she asked the night before. Then we face it together. What if it works? What if I'm less hideous? Then you'll match your beautiful soul better. But Elizabeth, you were never hideous to me. Your vision is impaired, she said with a weak smile. My vision is perfect where you're concerned. The surgery was partially successful. It reduced the contractures, gave her more mobility, and lessened the constant pain she'd hidden for years. The scars remained but were less angry, less restrictive. During her recovery, Marcus read to her, reversing their usual roles. You have a terrible reading voice, she told him affectionately. You've spoiled me with your theatrical talents. Perhaps I should teach elocution. Scarred or not, my voice is good. You could teach anything. You've taught me more about strength than anyone. 6 months later, Elizabeth discovered she was pregnant. The joy was tinged with fear. What if the child is ashamed of me? Then we'll teach them better. Children learn what they're taught. We'll teach ours that scars are just stories written on skin. And if they're born with perfect sight and have to see me clearly, then they'll see their mother, who is brilliant, brave, and beautiful. One of those things, perhaps. All of them. Their son was born in spring, healthy and loud. Marcus, whose vision had improved to about 60% of normal, could see him clearly enough to count fingers and toes. He's perfect, Elizabeth whispered. He is. Will you tell him about us, the truth? That his mother is scarred and his father is half blind. Yes, that we found each other through mutual need and built something through mutual choice. Absolutely. As young Thomas grew, he never seemed to notice his mother's scars as anything unusual. To him, she was simply mother, the one who sang lullabies, taught him letters, and could make his father laugh like no one else. Mama's face is special, he told a playmate once. It has stories. Elizabeth cried when she heard that, but they were tears of joy. The ranch prospered. Marcus's vision stabilized at functional if imperfect. Elizabeth's scars remained but ceased to define her, at least at home. In public, she still wore veils, but lighter ones that suggested rather than hid. Do you ever regret it? She asked Marcus on their 10th anniversary. Marrying a woman you'd never truly seen. I saw you perfectly from the beginning, just not with my eyes. That's sentimental nonsense. That's truth. Eyes can deceive. They show surface, not substance. I fell in love with your substance. The surface was just details. Important details. To others, perhaps, not to us. They sat on their porch watching their 3 children play in the yard. Thomas, now 8, was teaching his sisters to ride. The girls, twins with their mother's intelligence and their father's determination, were fearless. They don't see my scars as shameful, Elizabeth marveled, because we didn't teach them to. We taught them that people are more than their appearance. A blind man and a scarred woman raising children to see clearly. There's irony there. Or poetry. As the sun set, painting the ranch in gold and red, Marcus took Elizabeth's hand. His vision was clear enough to see her profile against the light. Both the scarred side and the unscarred side merged into the complete woman he'd loved without seeing and continued to love while seeing. I have a confession, he said. Another, no more hidden returning senses, I hope. No, just this. Even if my vision returned completely tomorrow, you would still be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Because love is blind. No, because love sees everything and chooses to embrace it all. Elizabeth turned to kiss him, no longer caring which side of her face caught the light. In the yard, their children laughed. On the ranch, cattle lowed. And on the porch, 2 people who'd thought themselves too damaged for love sat in comfortable silence. Proof that sometimes the best vision doesn't require eyes And the most beautiful faces are the ones that bear the marks of survival. Years later, when Thomas wrote his memoirs as a successful rancher in his own right, he would describe his parents' marriage as a union of mutual sight and hearts, each seeing past the other's wounds to the soul beneath, and in doing so healing what medicine couldn't touch. Elizabeth lived to 70, Marcus to 75. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their shared headstone reading, "They saw each other truly without need for perfect eyes." The Triple Creek Ranch still stands, now run by their descendants, who tell the story of the blind rancher and his scarred bride to anyone who'll listen, always ending with the same truth. They taught us that real vision comes from the heart and real beauty comes from the courage to be seen as you truly are.